Hello, my lovely, and welcome back to the Mother Gaia Birthy Pod. Today I am joined by Dr. Kate Wong, a chiropractor from California, who chats to me about the incredible ways our bodies work and how gentle alignment can have a profound impact on both pregnant women and children. We chat about the importance of starting at the beginning, understanding the body as a whole, so we can get the best outcomes from any therapy. Dr. Kate shares how chiropractic care can support pregnancy, helping with common discomforts and preparing the body for birth. We also explore how gentle adjustments can benefit children, particularly those with ADHD, as part of a holistic approach to behaviour therapy. If you've ever wondered how small, gentle shifts in the body can create big changes overall, then this is the episode you don't want to miss. So let's welcome Kate and see what she has to say.
My name's Dr. Kate Wong, DC in California, United States. And so I'm only doing house calls for chiropractic, and my focus is from pregnancy to postpartum, pediatric, and then preconception, just a family version of that aspect of it, because a lot of mothers, once they have kids or when they're pregnant, just don't really want to go to all these different doctor's appointments or take their kiddos there, pack everything up, get there. If the tantrums come up and certain things like that, it's just like a whole ordeal versus I'm just there and in their environment, adjusting them. When we're done, we just leave, we just play. And so I do that all over the Northern California Bay Area, which is near San Francisco. In that general realm, and so that's what I do. And
So, I mean, we do have chiropractors here, but they're not standard. They're not something that a lot of people sort of know about or go to or anything like that. So I'm going to go from a really stereotypical kind of viewpoint of you walk on people's backs and you crick their necks. And that's kind of what you generally see on TV and things like that, and how they do it as like the comedic way. But what is it in a nutshell? Kind of what is it that you do? How do you do it? Because I'm assuming you don't go around trying to break people's necks a lot.
I'm 5'3", a smaller set gal in general. I don't break anything. Well, I can't even try if I really wanted to. And in reality, what chiropractic nervous system focused chiropractors do, they basically focus on the nervous system. And you may have heard that recently in a little virality of like how to calm the vagus nerve, how to make sure we're more or less fight flight, calm that in that balance, in that teeter-totter. We're not too fight flight gas pedal, or we're not too rest and digest brake pedal. We're going either or when we need to. And we're helping that brain send that signal to the brain, communicate to the body that we're all right. We're appropriating those signals and that spectrum of energy, that electricity, that, when we need to move our arm one way, we do it versus like, or we can't, because that communicating from the brain, literally that brain signal goes down your spinal cord to your arm to move. And then how it's moving, left, right, up, down, if it's high enough, low enough, and things like that, signals back to the body, lets us know, are we doing that correctly? Or are we shifted to where the brain thinks we're in a certain position where it can't do that, and it thinks we're in a certain alignment, then things are kind of off. And when things are a little off, the body's like, whoa, 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 almost like fight, flight, protect myself. Hence a lot of people, which you tend to see, not only like kiddos too, but adults tend to go on a C curve. When we are born, we're born with a C curve, that protective mechanism to protect ourselves. And we don't really want to be in that zone of narrow, eye vision mode. We want to open that up to see the world, be curious, be open, able to look around. That's why sometimes stressed out kiddos tend to have blinders on. Have you noticed? They can't, if you really were to check them. That's the reason why as a pediatric chiropractor, I also do eye checks just to see how well they can follow. Sometimes they can't follow, but sometimes what they follow up to a certain position. And that's why sometimes when you see moms have I make fun of this. There's a little joke I do for the kids. It's like, you know how moms have eyes in the back of their heads?
Yeah.
That's what you're kind of supposed to have as well. But
Yep.
so in a essence, essence of that is basically I work with the nervous system to balance that, to calm that, so the brain and body knows how to communicate versus we're too fight flight or too stuck and don't rest and digest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've just listened to something else completely different today, but almost exactly the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They were talking about again, fight or flight, but with things like breath work. And again, they touched on things like being in that, you call it a C curve. I think I've heard it mentioned as a fetal position where you're curled over, you're bent over, and saying particularly within birth and within labor, that position is a really bad position to be in when you've got your chin to your chest, you're really curled over, you're in that protective kind of stance because you're not in a place where you can actually get baby out. It's making it more difficult for you when you are in a frightened protective stance, as opposed to, like you said about the vagus nerve and things like that, being able to tell yourself that yes, it's painful, but actually I'm okay. Like I'm not having to run away from this, and being able to open out to give yourself that space so you can breathe breathe baby out and things like that. So it's all kind of like aligning up. You can see where you can join all the dots to lots of different things.
Yeah. And it's so important in pregnancy and birth wise, as you likely will know, literally know in general. And so what happens is when we're in that C curve, when we're in that fight flight, it sends signals to the body that we're in danger.
Yeah.
We're not able to let go. And literally, that's the reason why I work with pregnant moms a lot too, is because when we're in that sense, the body's like, whoa, hold, we're not ready. Not gonna start yet, not gonna start labor, or we just stop labor for whatever reason. So when we're able to kind of relax, then the uterus relax, the muscles relax, the pelvis opens up, then things communicate. That's the reason why I work with the pelvis and alignment wise, where it needs, you know, as you're, especially in the third trimester, the ligaments tend to lax, things tend to open up. When things in the pelvis are not as aligned, it doesn't send correctly those signals to the organs, to the brain, letting the body know we're in that ready position. So the goal is to get you ready. And how do we, as chiropractor, how do I do it and others do, we align the pelvis a very gentle way, but sometimes afterwards or just before pregnancy, sometimes get a little stuck. Hence you may hear a little more like the crack, the little adjustment, but sometimes a lot of chiropractors also do like more of a hold adjustment like I do, and things just align where it needs with your breath.
Yeah.
So it's more like a gentle version. That's why I don't go viral as much.
Yeah,
on social media, because I'm a boring hold.
Yeah. I know how that feels. Yeah, I've done sort of acupressure and things on my client this morning, and it was just it was exactly what you say. She was on all fours in a comfortable position, and all I was doing was lifting and pushing her hips just to give her that little bit of support for a minute. And you could see her whole body just go, ah. And even she was going, oh, can you stay there for a bit longer? And I'm like, I'd love to, but my knees are about to give out. I was only showing you how to do it.
So imagine when a mom starts with, started with morning sickness, all this like fight, flight. Oh my gosh, a lot of things going on, and they're going towards, if it's a horrible version of a pregnancy, and then as you get towards that marathon of birth, the last thing you want to do is relax, right?
Yeah.
So that's why the goal is to get in that state, however you will go about it, chiropractic, acupuncture, whatever it is, to get that there, and then when after birth, postpartum, to recover from that. Yeah. And then help the baby if there's any kind of birth trauma or certain things like that as well.
Yeah. So I think you said, did you say you used, is the Webster technique? Did you say you used? So tell me a bit more about that. How is that different from sort of traditional chiropractic, or is it specifically for pregnancy, or what is that?
Yeah, so the Webster technique is basically from the ICPA, which is the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association. They teach chiropractors, they get certified in that. So specifically after, either they're in school or after school, they go to a training specifically for prenatal pediatric, and they go there, get certified, knowing exactly what's going on with the pelvis, how it's aligned, how to adjust it, when to adjust it, what other things to check during that time. Besides the pelvis, there's also musculature around it, and then up the spine as well. And so making sure the sacrum, so you likely, your viewers or your listeners also may or may not know, the sacrum is attached to the uterus.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's attached to the uterus, how it's aligned from the sacrum back here also may tug on the uterus in the front, like a big hot air balloon.
Yeah.
And so you imagine that big balloon of the uterus, and you got these arms and ropes as like the ligaments holding it up. So if I'm the sacrum, we're pulling because it got shifted, whatever it is, like a maxillary, trauma, or just like sitting for long periods of time, can shift and got pull, and then on basically the uterus gets shifted, and baby indirectly moves however space it has.
Yes.
And so what happens is our goal is to align that from the pelvis, from the musculature, all the different parts and things that we check. And then that's how we making sure that the communication from the organ to the brain can make sense. And then when we're going the passageway wise, making sure that there's, room for the mom to move when they need to, or birth wise, certain positions that they need to get into, and also making sure that, baby is where it needs to be in a sense.
Yeah.
And so in reality, we don't move babies at all. That's practicing obstetrics. And what we actually do is align the mom, and then things go accordingly as nature is intended to.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's obviously a step above a lot of the basic things that we do already, or things that are in our sort of like an antenatal care and things like that. So one of the things that I tell a lot of my mums who are sort of towards the end of their pregnancy, ready for labour, there's a technique called curb walking. So you get the curb on the step, and you're walking one foot on the road and one step up. So you're walking like this. You're literally tilting your pelvis as you are walking up and down the step, and you do that backwards and forwards in a very basic way. You are then kind of, as you say, aligning that pelvis. It's kind of, that movement is moving it itself to get into a nicer position and opening up so that baby can drop in and things like that. I mean, obviously that's a very stripped back, very easy kind of technique compared to what you do and how you can see things, but you can see where the steps are, where things come from. Techniques that we talk about, you can kind of see where they've got their positions and things. So
it's almost like dancing into it.
I've seen so many, like I said, I think we were talking about TikToks and things like that. I've seen so many of them where they've got the dancing mums and the doctors and bits and bits are all doing these little wiggly dances and things, which it looks hilarious and are really fun, but actually have a really good purpose, a really positive outcome to doing it. So you can, even though like I said, I really didn't know much about chiropractors or how they worked or what they did and things like that, but you can see where the little basic techniques that maybe I've pulled from other places have got their basis within a proper, like say, chiropractic technique. So
I love it though. It gets them in the mood and like relaxed and fun versus like this like drama filled like scare fear of a birth, and sometimes people usually see me, especially most of the pregnant moms, I love to see ideally the ones are just like, I don't know, prepare myself, prepare my body, but usually the more dire ones are more like this, I have this pain, this certain parts of the pelvis, the pubic bone, certain things like that. Usually the pain part does drive them to me a little bit more often than I just want to prepare.
You do get that. I suppose it depends as well as if they've had children before and how many pregnancies they've had and things like that. I do find you get first time mums tend to do everything's perfectly easy breezy unless they're in pain, in which case they'll go and find someone to help them. The second, third, fourth time mums are going, I've done this before. This is really teach me, help me. They're a lot more open to like, I don't need to be in pain to be educated.
In reality, you don't need to be in pain at all, during the thing.
Well, let's wave that magic wand. It'd be very rich if we could do that. But I mean, I've said this before, like to go back to that, like the C curve and the being in that fight or flight and things like that, you are creating without doing it on purpose, you are creating more pain. Because if you're scared and you're tense and you're in that position and you're not aligned and your body's not working with each other, everything's going to be 10 times harder, which is going to be 10 times more painful. And whilst I'm not saying that birth is the most serenic, easiest, pain-free thing that will ever happen to you, you can reduce that. And like you said, by being more relaxed, by being more in a line, by not being in a tense, scared position, you're absolutely opening yourself up then to be able to get your body to work how it needs to work, to reduce all of that, as you said, the pain and things like that.
That's why I love like moms who go to hypnobirthing, they do like yoga, certain things like that, because the subluxation, which is the stuckness in the body, is not just, of a trauma. It's sometimes it's like even sitting for long periods of time or mentally certain things happen. So there's this continual chronic position that we're stuck in. Right. Or sometimes when it's just inflamed, that brings a lot more things happening, because when the ligaments are just lax, the body's trying to hold you together with all these muscles. But when your muscles are tired, then things kind of go a little wonky.
And especially when you're in late pregnancy as well, and that relaxing sort of kicked in and everything just goes like there's nothing holding anything anywhere by the end of it. So is there anything specifically that you kind of specialize in? Is there a particular like phase of pregnancy or a particular thing that you're really interested in, or a specific technique that you're really into?
I'm working. I used to start my career as like a stronger kind of whole, like a thrust of adjustment. And what I realize is I'm transitioning a little bit more into that breath work with a hold. Because in reality, I want to work with the body to where you're able to breathe into it. So eventually, what's addressing or what's pinpointing those issues, in a sense, those symptoms that's happening. So in a way, I'm eventually, I talk a lot sometimes, and what I'm telling the body, what's going on. Sometimes when people start with me, it's a little bit overwhelming. But by the end of like the care plan or certain things like that, they understand their body a lot more. Like, this is the reason why this is happening. This is why this is shifted. This is why. So you get a signal like, oh, Dr. Kate mentioned this happened, so this is that. So I know how to help myself versus me being there all the time. Like, I love, home visit. I love to visit you at your home. But in reality, I'd rather you help yourself and you understand your body. So you know that when there's things that you can do yourself, you can do it. But when you need a little bit more of help, a little bit more assistance, I'm there just to guide you. But really, that's where my focus tends to be, like a little bit more of a gentler hands. Hence, that's why it's not so scary when I work with newborns, 7 hours after labor or 24 hours birth, certain things like that. My goal is just to align, because there's, as you know, going down the birth canal, if there's a normal vaginal, birth, it's a lot of squishing, a lot of like stuckness, a lot of certain things that get, a little wonky in there as well. And so after birth is to make sure that we're aligning those things so the baby's body know what to do, that it doesn't feel like it's fight or flight, and it doesn't feel like it's uncomfortable, where it can't lift up its head, where he or she can't, move a certain way, right? Or digest. That's why there's a lot of moms that come to me with colic issues and things like that, because, in reality, the baby's not supposed to cry all the time. Right?
Sometimes it's supposed to sleep, I've been told.
It's common, but not normal, right? So the goal is to, why is the baby uncomfortable? So it's so interesting, because when I check the baby's spine or certain things like that, I feel certain things that are a little bit more tension, a little bit more like the bone gets a little bit shifted on one side versus the other. And that's part of the reason why they can't turn their head all the way when they're feeding. They can't open their mouth all the way. Or they have tongue tie, may be a certain kind of issue. But the thing is, the tie, if you ever seen the picture where there's an image of the tongue all the way down to the tippy toes, right? the tongue is attached all the way down to the toes in the fascia. But if we just, if there's some, I don't know how it is in the UK, but there's like, tongue tie revisions, certain things like that in the United States. Sometimes just clipping that little one on the top, yes, it helps. But how is the rest of the body all the way down to the toes, right? That's why sometimes things aren't as easy after. Right after might be a quick easy of a latching, but afterwards it's like, oh, it got worse, or it's not getting as easy because the rest of the body is still tense because it formed the whole time in the womb with that tension.
Yeah. I mean, I'm loving the fact that you're very sort of holistic in the theory of that it's the whole body view. It's not just oh well, you give birth through the birth canal, so I'm only going to work on your hips, or
no.
the baby's, I don't know, legs aren't moving properly, so I'm only going to work with their knees or something like that. I think, like we were saying before, like obviously a reflexologist I have been for many years, and I peeled it right back this morning. One of my clients, she brought in her daughter who's about 9 years old, and she wanted to know what I was doing, but obviously you can't go in. I mean, I've trained for years and years and years. You're like, okay, so this is an eye and this is this, and they're like, what? It's a foot. What are you talking about? So I kind of stripped it back to, if you imagine that your body, you have a nervous system which goes from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. If they all start in your brain and go through every part of your body till they get to your feet has a connection through your nervous system to every other part of your body. So by working on certain points of the feet, you work on certain connections with certain points of the body. And she just got it instantly. She's like, that's amazing. That's brilliant. But when you are looking at stuff like that as well, particularly with things like reflexology, even when you go into things like acupressure, like yourself, you're not just looking at, right, well, this person's left leg hurts. It's like, well, why does it hurt? Is it coming from somewhere else? The body works in zigzags. So actually, is it their right shoulder that's putting them out of whack? Is there something else going on somewhere else? Is it an old trauma from, I don't know, a football accident or something? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
You look at that whole person, not just the one thing they've come in for a complaint about. So like I said, when I've been doing loads of podcasts here, I think you're about like, I don't know, 20 something. I'm not even sure anymore. When I'm talking to other experts and things, I always go, so where would you look at and how do you do this and all that kind of stuff? And the best ones that I've always found are the ones who look at the people as a whole, not just the one little thing that happens to be causing an issue, because it's very, very rarely that one thing that actually is the problem.
Yeah, I have, different people come to me at different ages and say, like, my knee hurts, all these different things. I'm like, well, in my head, I'm like, yes, your knee hurts, but what's happening above or below?
Yeah.
That's why sometimes it's so limiting for Western like doctors or allopathic practitioners, where they're only limited to the foot. When they tell me they go to that doctor, well, I have to go to the foot doctor, but then the foot doctor doesn't do the knee doesn't do the hip, and then it's going to go to all these different specialists to wait all this different time when I could have just adjusted them, making sure that we align everything. Because it could be, like I said, coming from the shoulder, coming from the upper part of the neck, which is the most proprioception, meaning the most area that we know where we are in space, that tilts you and then gets more down all the way down to the foot.
Yeah.
And so that's why some of the grandparents tell me, it's so funny. They call me like a voodoo doctor. Because like, she just knows. I don't know how she does, but she just does.
Yeah, I get called woo-wah quite a lot as well. I'm like, there's nothing woo-wah about it. I can just see by the way that you're walking.
You literally see like in their body that it's saying like, this is the tension, and you just go towards it and just see what unwinds.
Absolutely. So you kind of touched on as well that you do chiropractic methods on little teeny tiny babies. And you touched on obviously tongue tie, sorry. Is there anything else that you kind of like work with? Is there any sort of like adjustments like quite common that you tend to work with little ones?
Yeah. So let's see. So feeding was one of them. Colic was one of them. Like digestive pooping. Another one, constipation, eczema sometimes too. Because interestingly, actually, eczema, the skin is one of our biggest, organs in our bodies. and it's also an excretion organ.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is when we're not pooping properly or all the way out, when there's still toxins kind of stuck in our gut in a sense, and if it can't come out in our poop, it comes out in our skin.
Yeah.
And so what happens is when the digestive system is not as mature, that's why they're breastfeeding, right, from the mom. And so what happens is what I usually notice is the sacrum, which is, the little triangular bone near the bum, and then the middle part of the back, those areas tend to be a little bit more stuck. And so what I do tend to see is when moms have fast births,
mm-hmm.
very, very fast births, that part gets a little bit kind of stuck because of the way they came out.
Yeah.
And so sometimes what I know is those areas, let's see what else. And then also tummy time. Tummy time is a big struggle sometimes for some of the kiddos. They're not able to lift up their heads
mm-hmm.
because they're in that C curve, right? And then certain parts, they get stuck in the pelvis a little bit more. They can't turn their head as well, or they just cry and just don't know what's wrong, right? That one is another one as well. There's a whole plethora of things that chiropractic can help with. And eventually the goal is to kind of start very young, start newborn wise, because what happens is when we stay stuck for such a long period of time, eventually that stuckness becomes very common. Yeah. And so sometimes it could just be colic, but in the long run, there 5, 10 becomes a long chronic gut issue. Yeah. Becomes sometimes on the spectrum, sometimes all these different social aspects, because those things are the basic building blocks of development, and the able to do movement, do visual, verbal talk, and certain things. And when you're uncomfortable, those things get kind of shifted down or skipped, and we don't want those things skipped at all. We want them in a very nice, easy way, stepping stone up the way. And that sometimes eventually leads to a social aspect of it. We're like insecure about ourselves, or, not able to visualize. Like I have a 12-year-old actually. He's not on the spectrum or anything. He's actually a really smart kid, but he's very narrow in intellect. He's very, very smart in math and science. Yeah. But social is the other aspect where it's difficult. The mom says like he gets bullied a little bit, but he doesn't care in a sense because socially he doesn't get that concept. And what I noticed when I checked him was his eye vision field of gaze was narrow. He could only see about here. Yeah. And once everything farther, he can't see. So if you imagine if you're socially needing to go what's going on in that group, going on in school, what's going on over there, or reading what's going on here and there, that's like a lot more range that you need. And even if I just did this from here and that, I'm literally opening up my chest. And that movement needs that movement to open up to where we can actually, not just mentally, but physically see. Yeah. And then see what's going on in that environment. Then that environment, that movement gets to the brain can understand what's going on and then do what it needs to for behavior. That's why behavior is actually a really big one that some of the moms come to me as well for, because behavior is a window to their brain of what's going on and what more important is the brain for all of us, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just sort of like from my point of view as well, I've got 3 young boys, all at obviously various stages. My eldest is on a pathway at the minute to see whether he's got ADHD and autism and things like that. So a very, very sort of similar thing. He's quite bright in, you can give him quite an advanced Lego kit and he will zoom in on it and he'll just do it. It might take him a couple of hours, but he'll do it and he'll get it done. He's quite good at his maths and his understanding of like the English language. But when it comes to things like actually writing it down, he'll get letters the wrong way around and things like that. When it comes to, like you say, social behavior and understanding how other people interact and things like that, it just totally goes over his head. He has no idea whether he's meant to be loud or quiet or still or moving or anything. Like he's got no concept of sort of the world around him. And it's just coming to me now that he is very blinkered. It's like he has little horsey blinkers on and you can only see what's directly in front of him.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to kind of fix these things together and what have you. It's not something I'd ever thought of before, but now you've said it, it makes perfect sense.
And then the training to how to open that up. Sometimes some parents tend to go the primitive reflex route first. What I tend to see of a better version, a little easier for the kiddos as well too, is to make sure that they're aligned correctly, to be able to move a certain way, then add the exercises.
Yeah.
And that's the better route versus, because sometimes what I notice is a lot of parents tend to do more of the exercise first before their body is ready. Yeah.
I think that goes with a lot of things as well, because obviously, especially in our world now, we're in that position where we have access to lots and lots of information and lots of educational stuff. And whilst it's all very good stuff, if you don't start at the basics, and like we were saying about the dancing in labor, it's a brilliant technique. But there's no good learning how to dance when you're in advanced labor stages. If you've never done it before and you're in advanced labor and you start dancing, it's not going to do anything for anybody. Whereas if it's something that you've understood the techniques for, you understand what the movements are supposed to be, you've then put those movements to a dance that you've then practiced throughout the pregnancy, it makes it so much easier. And like you say, we could... Yeah, we could TikTok something or Google it or do whatever we want to do. And like you say, oh, well, look at all these exercises that are going to help my child with ADHD. Let's just follow this Wikipedia advice. Whereas it might be really good advice, it's probably 3, 4, 5 stages in advance of where you actually need to start. And having someone like yourself who goes, right, peel it back. This is where we're going to go. This is the first thing we're going to do before we get there.
Yeah.
And as you've obviously seen yourself and proved yourself that it works so much better when you know what you're doing.
Because it's so interesting when the body's not ready, it's not ready, right? But
Absolutely.
how do we help and assist the body to get ready? And so I even have moms who's never seen a chiropractor or anyone during pregnancy or before. And they actually, the one time that I went for a home visit, they were in labor about 5 hours in. It was the first time I ever seen them. I really tried to help her, but then it's like it was the hardest, the longest adjustment I ever done.
Yeah.
Because I don't know her body, first of all. Like, she's so stressed out. She was doing a water birth, and then it was just like it was a lot. She was shaking. It's just a lot to handle.
Yeah.
Right? Versus when you already had the mindset of, okay, these are the options. Now how do I prepare myself? Eventually do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the same for literally, you can put that to anything. I had a very not similar situation, but comparable situation where I had a few years ago, someone rang me up and said, oh, we would like to try reflexology to help encourage baby to come. And I did a home visit and I got there and it was very clear that this lady was very, very, very pregnant. And when I said, like, how many weeks are you? She's like, oh, 41 plus something or other. And I was like, you do realize that I needed to be working on you from like 37 weeks regularly, like twice a week, right up until like now kind of thing for it to actually work. I can do reflexology on you and you will probably go into labor in the next couple of days because you're actually ready to go into labor and it'll have nothing to do with the reflexology. So you do kind of get that, like people go, oh, let's try this magical thing that someone told me about that I've never done before.
Yeah, I try. We try our best, right? We try our best to help, and sometimes that's why we want to educate everyone else that you want to get in that mindset of what options there are. Start early, right? Before it's like the very last result, last thing.
Last ditch attempt at whatever. So if anybody is in your neck of the woods, where can they find you? How can they get in contact with you?
Instagram is the best way to find me. It's my business card. So if you find me on Instagram, Dr.Kate Wong DC, all spelled out. That's the best way to contact me. I'm the quickest to respond from there as well, versus the email. So you're always on a Instagram. You can't get rid of it off your phone or anything like that, can you? There's no hiding from Instagram. And then to add on, if there's any moms that are interested in chiropractic or nervous system based chiropractors, There's 2 networks to go from, basically PX Docs. They're worldwide, or even the nervous system chiropractors as well. Those are 2 really good things to find.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with me.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, that is it for this episode of the Mother Gaia Birthy Pod. I hope this conversation with Dr. Kate Wong has given you a fresh perspective on how the body works and the power of gentle alignment. Whether you're pregnant and looking for ways to support your body through birth, or you're navigating life with a little one, especially one with ADHD, understanding the foundations of movement and alignment that can make all the difference. If this episode has resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come and find me on Instagram at mother_Gaia_Crabtree and share your takeaways, and let's keep up the conversation. And if you found this helpful, please consider leaving a review. It really helps get those important discussions out to more people who need them. Until next time, take care of yourself, trust your body, and keep learning.